So in this video lesson, we're going to go over the customary system, the types of units that are in the customary system, and the types of things and how we measure with the customary system. But before we do that, I want to go back and have a quick review of the metric system. And just the idea that in the metric system, there are three basic units: gram, liter, and meter. And if we want to measure in any of those units, we just add prefixes to the beginning of the unit, and that changes the amount. If we add kilo to gram and get kilogram, we end up with 1,000 grams. If we add deca to meter and get decameter, we end up with 10 meters. And centa to liter to centiliter means that we're looking at 1/100th of a liter, so 100 centiliters in a liter. And I want you to stop and think for a second. Does the customary system, the system that we use in the United States, does that have something similar to the way that the metric system works, where we just multiply by 10 or divide by 10 or basically work in multiples of 10? And if you think about it for a second, think about the types of units that you know, then we'll realize that the customary system doesn't have anything that's based in 10. All of the conversions, all the changes that we have in their different types of units are in different amounts. So let's go ahead and look at a few of the customary units that you're probably most familiar with, what they use, and some definitions that we need. So the first is length. In metric system, the basic unit of length is a meter. In the customary system, there is no basic unit of length because every length has a different name and they're all defined differently compared to each other. So what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video, write down the fact that these units represent length, which cover distances, and write down and fill in as best as you can these four true statements about length. How many inches are there in a foot? How many feet are there in a yard? How many feet are there in a mile? And how many inches are there in a yard? Pause the video, write down what I've noted, and come back, and we'll move on. So, in the customary system, we have 12 inches in a foot, an inch being about the length of a small paperclip. We said a centimeter was about the width of a large paperclip, but an inch is the length of a small paperclip. There are 3 feet in the yard. There are 5,280 feet in a mile, and there are 36 inches in a yard. So if you incorrectly filled in any of these blanks, please correct them now before moving on to the next section, which is on capacity. And capacity, just like in the metric system, is the amount a container can hold. In the metric system, we have the basic unit of a liter, where in the customary system, we really don't have a basic unit for capacity. We have all of these things represented in Mr. Gallon: ounces, cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. So go ahead, pause the video, write down the definition of capacity, and fill in these four blanks as well as you can. So, if we look at Mr. Gallon, this is how a gallon breaks down. There are 4 quarts in a gallon, going from the bottom. Quart with the same first syllable as the word quarter, broken down into 4, so 4 quarts in a gallon. Each quart is made up of 2 pints, each pint made up of 2 cups, and each cup is 8 ounces. So if you didn't correctly fill in any of those blanks, please pause the video and do that now before we move on to the last one, which is weight. And in terms of weight, the metric system measures what's mass, which is the amount of matter in an object, whereas the customary system, we typically talk about things in terms of their weight, which is the amount that an object weighs. So our 3 basic units are an ounce, a pound, and a ton. Go ahead, see if you can, when you pause the video, to write down the definition of weight. See if you can fill in these blanks with how many ounces are in a pound and how many pounds are in a ton. So, we have 16 ounces in a pound. And for pounds in a ton, there are 2,000 pounds in a ton. So a ton is much, much, much larger than a pound is. And so the last part of your video lesson, what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video, or stop the video rather, go back to each of those units that we had talked about before, and try to come up with a different example of something that can be measured in each of those units. So for weight, something else that you think with comparing the weight to a slice of bread. What else could be measured with 1 ounce, 1 pound, 1 ton? When we look back at capacity, what sorts of things are measured in gallons, quarts, pints, cups, or ounces? And in length, things measured in inches, feet, yards, and miles. So for each of those units, go ahead and come up with an example of something else that can be measured using each of those units, and we'll go over more in class tomorrow.